Hello and welcome back to the Wholehearted Living podcast with your host Deb Thorpe. And thank you for being here. For anyone who is watching this podcast on YouTube, you will spot the woolly jumpers that are now present because we've officially entered winter in Italy and it is freezing cold. We've actually had our first snow here. So very much going into winter gear now. And, today I want to touch on the thing that feels probably equal parts terrifying and liberating, and that is living authentically. What it is to drop the mask, to show up as you fully unfiltered without the performance. And I want to start by asking you a question. When was the last time you showed up as yourself, the real self, without editing, performing, without trying to be who you think you should be? For most of us, the answer is we can't really remember, because we've been wearing masks for so long that we've forgotten what our real face looks like. We've been performing for so long, we've forgotten what it feels like to just be. We've been editing ourselves for so long, we've forgotten what our unfiltered voice sounds like. And for the most part, we're pretty exhausted by it, because performing is exhausting, pretending is exhausting, constantly monitoring yourself to make sure you're being acceptable is exhausting. And here's the thing, you can't be in your wholeness if you're hiding your real self. You can't live wholeheartedly if you're living behind a mask all the time. And you can't create authentic connection if you're showing up as a performance. In the last episode, we talked about choosing yourself, about what it is to stand alone in your vision, on honouring your truth even when others don't understand. And now comes the next step, showing up as yourself, as your true self, authentic self. Because choosing yourself internally is one thing, living it externally and showing the world who you actually are, that's another. And I get that it's terrifying, because what if they don't like the real you? What if you're too much? What if you're not enough? What if being authentic means losing people? These fears are real, and we're going to talk about all of them today. But here's what I know after 20 years of doing this work and walking this journey myself. Authenticity is the only path to real connection, to real fulfillment and wholeness. On the other side of dropping the mask, there's a freedom you can't even begin to imagine yet. So take a breath, ground yourself, and let's begin. Before we talk about how to be authentic, we need to talk about why it's so freaking hard. Because here's the paradox. We crave authenticity. We want to be seen for who we truly are. We want to be known for our true selves. We want real connection. And yet we do everything we can to avoid it. We wear masks, we perform, we edit ourselves, we hide the parts we think aren't acceptable. Why? Why do we long for authenticity and yet spend so much time and energy avoiding it? Because authenticity feels like a threat to survival. Here's the truth. Authenticity is vulnerable. When you show up as your real self, unedited, unfiltered, without the performance, you're exposing yourself. You're showing people the parts you've been hiding, the messy parts, the imperfect parts, the parts you're not sure are acceptable. And that feels dangerous. Because what if they don't like the real you? What if you are too much? What if you are not enough? What if being authentic means losing people? What if being real means being rejected? Your nervous system reads authenticity as a threat, because for most of your life, being real wasn't safe. You learned that certain parts of you weren't acceptable, that expressing your real feelings maybe got you in trouble, that showing your needs made you a burden. So you learned to hide, to perform, to wear a mask. And your nervous system remembers. The mask kept you safe. Authenticity put you at risk. Let's be honest for a moment about what authenticity can cost. Rejection. When you stop performing, some people won't like the real you. Judgment. When you show your humanity, some people will criticize you for it. Loss. When you drop the mask, some relationships will fall away. discomfort. When you speak your truth, some people will be uncomfortable. Uncertainty. When you stop being who everyone expects you to be, you don't know what will happen next. These costs are real and your nervous system knows it, which is why, even though you crave authenticity, you avoid it, because the mask has kept you safe. Let's talk about the fear underneath all the other fears. The fear that keeps you performing even when you're exhausted. The fear that keeps you hiding even when you crave connection. The fear that if you drop the mask, the real you, the unedited, unpolished, imperfect you, won't be enough. That you won't be lovable without the performance. That you won't be successful without the mask. That you won't be worthy without the doing. This is the core wound, and it's a lie. The mask didn't make you enough. You were already enough. The mask was protection, not proof of worth. You put it on because you learned that parts of you weren't acceptable, but that doesn't mean you weren't enough. Maybe it means the people around you couldn't hold all of you, and that's not your fault. That's not evidence that you're not enough. Dropping the mask doesn't make you less. It reveals the wholeness that was always there. You are enough. You always have been. The mask just made you forget. Here's what we don't talk about enough. The masks that you wear, they've worked. The I've got it all together mask, it helped you build your career. The I don't need anything mask, it made you the strong one everyone could rely on. The I'm always positive mask, it made you likeable and easy to be around. The professional mask, it earned you respect and credibility. These masks got you love, they got you approval, they got you success. So the question then is, why would you drop them? Because what got you here won't get you into your fullness. The masks that helped you survive, that helped you succeed, that helped you build what you have, they're now preventing you from being your whole self. They worked, and now they're slowly killing the real you. Because you cannot sustain a life built on performance. Eventually the mask cracks, you burn out, right? So here's the paradox. We crave authenticity because we're exhausted from performing. We want to be seen, we want real connection, we want to stop hiding. But we avoid authenticity because the masks have worked. They have kept us safe, they've gotten us love, they've helped us succeed. And we're terrified of what will happen if we drop them. So we stay stuck in the middle, right, where we're craving authenticity, but we're avoiding it. We're longing to be seen, but we're hiding. Wanting real connection, but continuing to perform. And let's face it, we feel stuck. Because you can't be in your wholeness if you're in this hiding. You cannot live wholeheartedly if you're living behind a mask. And you can't create that authentic connection that you're truly desiring if you're showing up as a performance. So the question becomes, are you willing to risk the cost of your authenticity to gain your wholeness? Are you willing to risk rejection to be real? Are you willing to risk judgment in order to be seen? Are you willing to risk loss to be whole? That's the choice. And it's not an easy one. But here's what I know. The cost of staying behind the mask is always higher than the cost of dropping it. Let's talk about the masks for a minute. Because we all wear them, every single one of us. A mask is any version of you, of yourself, that you put on to be acceptable, to be safe, to belong. It's the version of you that says yes when you mean no, laughs at jokes that aren't funny, pretends to be fine when you're falling apart, hides your anger, your sadness, your needs, performs competence when you're struggling, acts like you have it all together when you're barely holding on. The mask is the performance, the edited version. What you've decided is the acceptable you. And here's the thing. You didn't put the mask on because you're fake. You put it on because you learned it wasn't safe to be real. Think back to when you were a child. You showed up fully, you expressed everything, you were loud, messy, emotional, honest, unfiltered. You were authentically you. And then something happened. Maybe you expressed anger and you were told, good girls don't get angry. Maybe you cried and you were told, stop being so sensitive. Maybe you were excited and you were told, calm down, it's just too much. Maybe you needed help and you were told, figure it out yourself, don't be so needy. And you learned, parts of me aren't acceptable. I need to hide them. So you put on a mask. The good girl mask, the strong one, the calm and capable one, the I don't need anything mask. And those masks kept you safe. You know, they helped you belong. They got you love and approval. But here's what also happened. You lost yourself. Because when you're wearing a mask, you're not being you. You're being the version of you that you think others want to see. And over time, you forget there's a difference. You start to believe the mask is you. And if you're a high achiever, you're driven and ambitious, you probably wear some very specific masks. The I've got it all together mask. You never let anyone see you struggle. You never ask for help. You perform competence even when you're drowning. The I don't need anything mask. You're the strong one, the capable one, the one everyone else leans on. You don't have needs. You don't take up space. The always positive mask. You're upbeat, optimistic, solutions focused. You don't complain. You don't express frustration or anger or disappointment. The professional mask. You're polished, put together, appropriate. You don't show emotion. You don't bring your personal life to work. You keep it separate. The I'm fine mask. That no matter what's happening internally, externally, you're fine. Always fine, even when you're not. Do any of these sound familiar? Because these masks have helped you succeed, right? They've helped you to build your career, your business, your reputation, but they're also killing you inside. Here's what's important to understand. These masks didn't just keep you safe, they did help you to succeed and get to where you are. The I've got it all together mask, it made you the go-to person, the reliable one, the one people trusted with important projects. The I don't need anything mask, it made you low maintenance, easy to work with, the strong one everyone could depend on. The always positive mask, it made you a pleasure to be around, the one who lifted everyone's spirits, the one people wanted on their team. These masks worked. They got you promoted, they got you clients, they got you respect and credibility. So of course you kept wearing them. But here's what's also true. What got you here won't get you into your fullness. The masks that helped you build success are now preventing you from experiencing wholeness. They helped you climb the ladder, but now you're at the top and you're miserable or unfulfilled because you cannot sustain a life built on performance. Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, Debs, this sounds great, but what if being authentic makes me less successful? What if my clients don't want to work with a leader who admits they don't have all the answers? What if my team loses respect for me? This is a real fear, especially if you're in an industry that rewards performance. But here's the truth. Authenticity doesn't make you less effective. It makes you more effective. Research shows that authentic leaders are more trusted, more respected, and more influential. When you show up as a real human, when you admit you don't have all the answers, when you show vulnerability, when you let people see your humanity, you don't lose credibility, you gain it. Because people don't follow perfect leaders, they follow real ones. People don't trust leaders who never struggle. They trust leaders who are honest about the struggle and keep going anyway. People don't connect with the polished performance. They connect with the person underneath. Authenticity is not unprofessionalism, it's integrity. It's not oversharing or dumping on your team. It's about being honest about what you know and what you don't. It's not performing vulnerability for connection. It's showing up as a whole human who happens to be leading. And here's what I've observed. The leaders who drop the mask, they become more magnetic, not less. The business owners who show up authentically, they attract better clients, not fewer. The high achievers who stop performing, they create more sustainable success, not less. Because authenticity creates trust, and trust is the foundation of everything. So no, authenticity won't hurt your career, it will transform it. Here's what it costs you to keep wearing the mask. Firstly, you lose connection with yourself. When you're constantly performing, you lose touch with what you actually feel, need, and want. You don't know what's true for you anymore because you've been so focused on what others need. Secondly, you lose real connection with others. When you show up as a performance, people connect with the mask, not you. And so you end up feeling really lonely, even when you're surrounded by people, because no one actually knows you or sees the real you. Thirdly, you're exhausted. Performing is exhausted. Monitoring yourself constantly, making sure you're being acceptable, trying to pre-think what everyone else is thinking, it takes enormous energy and you end up having nothing left for yourself. Fourthly, you feel like a fraud because you know the version people see isn't the whole truth and you're terrified that if they saw the real you, they'd leave. Fifthly, you can't be whole because wholeness requires all of you, not just the acceptable parts, not just the polished parts, all of you. And as long as you're wearing a mask, you're hiding parts of yourself. And you cannot be whole if you're hiding. Now let's talk about something that makes authenticity even harder. The lies we tell ourselves. Because here's the thing, you can't be authentic if you don't know what's true. And most of us have been lying to ourselves for so long, we don't even know what's true anymore. So, do any of these sound familiar? I'm fine when you're not. I'm good, I don't need anything when you do. This is just who I am when it's actually a survival pattern. I'm not angry when you are. It doesn't bother me when it does. I'm over it when you're not. I don't mind when you do. I can handle it when you're drowning. These are the lies we tell ourselves to stay safe, to stay acceptable, to keep the peace. And we've been telling them for so long, we believe them. We've lost touch with what's actually true. We don't lie to ourselves because we're bad people. We lie to ourselves because telling the truth felt dangerous at some point. Think about it. If you admitted you weren't fine, someone might have expected you to fall apart and you couldn't afford to. If you admitted you needed something, you might have been seen as weak or needy, and that wasn't safe. If you admitted you were angry, you might have been labelled difficult or too much, and you needed to be acceptable. So you lied to yourself and to everyone else. And over time, the lies became your reality. You started to believe, I'm fine, I don't need anything, I'm good, this is who I am. But it's not true. This is why stage 1 of the wholehearted technique is radical honesty, because you cannot be authentic if you're not honest about what's actually true. You cannot drop the mask if you don't know what's underneath it. You cannot show up as your real self if you don't know who your real self is. And you can't know who you are if you've been lying to yourself. So hopefully you see throughout this series that the first step is always radical honesty. This is about getting honest with what you actually feel, not what you think you should feel. What you actually need, not what you think you should need. What's actually true for you, not what you've been telling yourself. And this is hard because when you start telling yourself the truth, you realize how much you've been lying, and that can be devastating. So if I've been lying to myself, how do I actually know who I really am? And here's the answer. You don't, not at first. Finding your authentic self is a journey, not a destination. You don't just wake up one day and suddenly know, this is who I am, this is it. You discover it slowly over time. You peel back the lies one by one. You notice the masks one by one. You reconnect with the parts of yourself you've been hiding one by one. And slowly you start to remember who you are beneath all the performance. I need to acknowledge something here that often gets overlooked when we talk about authenticity: the grief. When you realise you've been wearing masks for years, maybe even decades, when you realise you've been performing, hiding, editing yourself to be acceptable, there's grief. Grief for the time you lost. Grief for the energy you spent trying to be someone you weren't. Grief for the connections you missed because no one knew the real you. Grief for the version of yourself you abandoned to stay safe. And this is real, and it can feel really heavy. And if you're feeling it right now, if you're realizing how much of your life you've spent behind a mask, I want you to know it's okay to grieve, to feel the sadness, the anger, the pain. It's okay to feel angry that you had to hide. It's okay to feel sad about what you missed. It's okay to feel devastated that you've spent so much time being someone you're not. You're allowed to grieve what was lost. But here's what I also want you to know. It's not too late. You can reclaim yourself now. You can drop the mask now. You can start living authentically now. You haven't lost yourself. The real you, the one underneath the performance, is still there. The real you has been waiting, and now you get to bring yourself home. So grieve for what was lost, honour it, feel it, and then choose to reclaim yourself. Because you haven't come this far to only come this far. So what is your authentic self? Let's start with what it's not. It's not a fixed identity, a single true self you need to find, a perfect version of you, the version of you that never changes. Your authentic self is not a destination, it's a practice. Your authentic self is what's aligned with your wholeness, that's honest about what you feel, need, and want. The part that's not performing for acceptance, it's what's integrated, where all your parts are welcome. And here's the nuance. Your authentic self is not one thing. You're many parts, okay, many facets. There's many different versions of yourself. And authenticity is not about finding the one perfect true self. It's about integrating all your parts. It's about creating an internal home where the driven part and the tired part can both exist. The angry part and the peaceful part can both have a voice. The wounded child and the wise adult can both be honoured. Authenticity is wholeness, and wholeness is integration. Now, some of you might be thinking, Debs, I've been performing for so long, I don't even know who I am anymore. What if there's nothing underneath the mask? What if I've lost myself completely? And I get this is a terrifying question, and I want to answer it directly. You haven't lost yourself. You're still there, you're just buried. Think of it like this. Imagine you have a garden, and over the years you've covered it with concrete, layer after layer after layer. You can't see the garden anymore. You can't remember what it looks like. You might have even forgotten that it's there. But the garden isn't gone, it's just buried. And when you start to break up the concrete, when you start to peel back the masks, the lies, the performance, the garden is still there. It might take some time to excavate, it might take some patience, it might take courage. But the real you is there, the one who knows what they feel, what they need, what they want. They didn't disappear, they just went underground to stay safe. And now you get to bring them back to life, one layer at a time, one truth at a time, one small act of authenticity at a time. You haven't lost yourself, you're just rediscovering who you are. Here's why finding your authentic self is a journey. You know, you've been conditioned for years, maybe decades. You didn't put on that mask yesterday. You've been wearing it for years. So it takes time to peel it back, to see what's underneath, to remember who you are. You know, your authentic self is dynamic, not static. So you're not trying to find a fixed version of yourself. You're evolving, growing, becoming. Your authentic self today might look different from your authentic self 5 years from now, and that's okay. Authenticity requires ongoing honesty. You don't just get honest once and then you're done. You have to keep checking in. What's true for me right now? What do I actually feel? What do I actually need? Authenticity is a practice, not a destination. Now let's talk about something that's really nuanced that comes up a lot with client work. Knowing when to choose which part of you shows up. Because here's where people get confused. If authenticity means being yourself, does that mean you show up in the same way in every context? Do you bring the same energy to a board meeting that you bring to your best friend's living room? Do you express the same emotions with your team that you express with your partner? No. That doesn't make you, and that doesn't make you inauthentic. It makes you discerning. As you will have been learning throughout this series, you are many parts, many facets. There's many versions of yourself. There's the leader, the vulnerable part, the playful part, the serious part, the nurturing part, the fierce part, and they're all you. They're all authentic. Authenticity is not about showing every part of yourself in every context. Authenticity is about choosing which part of you is needed in this moment and showing up as that part without pretending. So, how do you know the difference between choosing which part of you shows up, which is discernment, and hiding who you are, which is masking? Here's the key distinction. Masking is hiding parts of yourself because you're afraid they're not acceptable. It's performing a version of yourself that isn't true in order to get approval. It's abandoning your real self to fit in. It's driven by fear of rejection or judgment. Discernment is choosing which part of yourself is most aligned in this context. It's showing up fully as that part without pretending. It's honoring that different context calls for different facets of you. It's driven by wisdom and alignment. Let me give you some examples here. Example 1, leading a team meeting. Masking would be you performing confidence and hiding the fact that you're struggling. You pretend to have all the answers when you don't. You abandon your humanity to maintain the strong leader image. The discernment in that situation is you showing up as the leader part of you, the part that holds space, makes decisions, and guides the team. You're still real, you're still human, but you're choosing to lead from the grounded, clear part of you, not the overwhelmed part. That's not a mask, that's discernment. Here's another example, like being with your partner. The masking might be you performing fine when you're actually hurting. You hide your vulnerability because you're afraid of being a burden. Using discernment means you show up as the vulnerable part of you, the part that needs some support, that's honest about how you're struggling and that asks for help. You're choosing to be soft, open, and real. That's not a mask, that's discernment. Here's another example, setting a boundary with a client, for example. Masking is when you say yes when you mean no because you're afraid of disappointing them. You perform agreeableness in order to be liked. Approaching this with discernment is you showing up as the boundaried part of you, the part that knows what's aligned and what's not, and can say no with clarity and compassion. You're choosing to honour your limits, and that's not a mask, that's discernment. So, how do you know which part of you to show up as in any given moment? Ask yourself, number 1, what does this moment need? Does it need the leader, the nurturer, the protector, the vulnerable one? Different moments call for different parts of you. Secondly, which part of me is most aligned right now? Not which part will make people comfortable, not which part will get approval, not which part is what you normally do in this situation, but what part is most true and most aligned. Thirdly, am I hiding or choosing? If you're hiding a part of yourself because you're afraid it's not acceptable, that's masking. If you're choosing to lead with a particular part because it's what's needed, that's discernment. Fourthly, am I abandoning myself or honouring the context? If you're abandoning your truth, your needs, your feelings, that's masking. If you're honouring that different contexts call for different expressions of yourself, that's discernment. Here's what's important to understand. All of your parts are authentic. The leader is authentic, the vulnerable one is authentic, the fierce protector is authentic, the playful one's authentic. You don't have to show all of them all the time. You just have to show up as the part that's most aligned in this moment, and show up as that part fully without pretending. That's authenticity with discernment. Now, here's another layer of nuance. Something that often confuses people when we're talking about authenticity and dropping the mask. What's the difference between wearing a mask and leaning into the future version of you? Because here's where it can get a little bit tricky. Sometimes becoming who you're meant to be requires you to show up as a version of yourself that doesn't feel fully true yet. You step into the role before you feel ready. You speak with authority before you feel confident. You set boundaries before it feels natural. You show up as the leader, the visionary, the person you're becoming, even when it feels a little bit strange and a little bit untrue, a little bit like you're pretending. So, how is that different from wearing a mask? This is important, right? Because if you get this wrong, you'll either stay stuck in old patterns because you think growth means being fake, or you'll keep performing and calling it becoming. So let me break down the difference. The key distinction between masks and becoming is that a mask is hiding who you are to be acceptable. It's performing a version of yourself that isn't true to get approval. It's abandoning your real self to fit in. It's editing, suppressing, shrinking. A mask moves you away from your true self. Becoming is stepping into who you're meant to be before it feels comfortable. It's embodying the future version of yourself, even when it feels unfamiliar. It's growing into your wholeness, not away from it. It's expanding, expressing, claiming space. Becoming moves you toward your true self. Here's how to know whether you're wearing a mask or becoming. Ask yourself, is this moving me towards my wholeness or away from it? Wearing a mask often feels like contraction, hiding. I have to be this way or they won't accept me. Exhaustion, abandoning yourself. Becoming feels like expansion, even if it's uncomfortable. Revealing, this is who I'm meant to be, even if it's unfamiliar. It's energizing, even if it's scary. It's reclaiming yourself. Let me give you some examples to ground this. So, setting boundaries. The mask version would be you saying yes when you mean no, because you're afraid of disappointing people. You're performing agreeableness in order to be liked. Coming from that becoming place, you say no even though it feels uncomfortable and unfamiliar. You're not used to setting boundaries yet, but you know it's aligned with your wholeness. It feels strange, but it's moving you towards your true self, not away from it. That's not a mask, that's becoming. Second example, speaking with authority. So the masked you would be performing confidence to hide your insecurity. You pretend to know more than you do. You're trying to be someone you're not to impress people. When you're becoming, you speak with authority even though you don't feel fully confident yet. You're stepping into your power before it feels natural. You're claiming space for your voice even though it feels vulnerable. That's not a mask, that's becoming. Another example, showing up as a leader. The mask is you're performing the strong leader role by hiding your struggles, pretending you have it all together and never showing vulnerability. You're abandoning your humanity to fit that image. The becoming version of you is stepping into leadership even though it feels unfamiliar. You're learning to hold space, make decisions and guide others even when you don't feel fully ready, but you're still being real. You're still showing your humanity. You're just growing into a bigger version of yourself. And that's not a mask, that's becoming. Here's what's important to understand. Becoming always feels a little bit uncomfortable at first. When you step into the future version of yourself, when you step into the wholeness of yourself, when you set boundaries for the first time, when you speak with authority for the first time, when you claim the space for the first time, it doesn't feel natural yet. It feels strange and familiar, like you're trying on clothes that don't quite fit. And your brain will say, this isn't me, I'm pretending. But here's the truth. You're not pretending, you're growing. You're stepping into a version of yourself that's always been there, waiting. You're just not used to it yet. Think about it like this. When you learn a new language, it feels awkward at first. You stumble over words, you feel self-conscious, it doesn't feel natural. You don't have the muscle memory for those expressions. But you're not pretending or being fake, you're learning. When you start a new exercise routine, your body feels uncomfortable, the movements feel foreign, you feel sore, it doesn't feel easy. But you're not being fake, you're building strength. Becoming is the same as this. When you step into the future version of yourself, it feels uncomfortable because you're growing into something new. But discomfort doesn't mean it's not authentic. Discomfort just means it's unfamiliar. You've probably heard the phrase, fake it until you make it, right? And I just want to reframe that. Because fake it implies you're being inauthentic, right? That you're pretending to be something you're not. But that's not what's happening when you're becoming. You're not faking, you're embodying. You're not pretending to be someone else, you're stepping into who you actually are. The version of you that's been buried under the survival patterns, conditioning and fear. So instead of fake it till you make it, I say embody it before it feels true. Step into it before it feels comfortable. Claim it before it feels natural. Because the future version of you, the one who sets boundaries, who speaks with authority, who takes up space, who lives authentically, that version is already you. You're just not used to being that version yet. And the only way to start becoming that is to start showing up as that version, even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it feels unfamiliar, even when your brain says, this isn't me, it is you, you're just growing into it. Let me tell you about a time I had to embody a version of myself before it felt true. A couple of years ago, I did one of those ancestry DNA tests, and I was hoping really, to find some Mediterranean roots in my heritage. Something that would explain kind of my olive complexion, but also this deep pull I've had to the Mediterranean countries, especially Italy. And do you know what I found when I did that test? I am 98% Middle England. Not just English, like Middle England. And it's been that way for hundreds of years. Generations upon generations rooted in exactly the same place in the centre of England. So my pull to Italy, it doesn't just not make sense to most people. It's breaking ancestral DNA that's been rooted in the same place for generations. There's no logical reason for it, no family connection, no heritage, no roots to return to. Just a pull and knowing, a vision of a life that felt true, even though it had no basis in my lineage, my history, or my familiar self. When I first started visioning Italy, when I first started imagining myself living here, speaking Italian, integrating into this culture, it felt completely unfamiliar. It felt like I was trying on a life that just didn't quite fit, like I was pretending to be someone and someone more than I was. My brain was saying to me, this is not you. Like, who do you think you are? What even is this about, this pull to Italy? But here's what I knew deep in my bones, that this was the future version of me, and I had to step into her before it felt true. So I moved to Italy without speaking the language fluently, and I've had to show up and speak a language that doesn't feel true for me yet. I stumble over words, I make mistakes, I feel self-conscious, I sound like a child most of the time. And it would be easy to call that pretending or wearing a mask. To say, I'm pretending to be someone I'm not, I'm faking it, this isn't me. But here's the truth. I'm not faking or pretending, I'm becoming. I'm stepping into a version of myself that's always been there. The version that feels at home in Italy, that speaks Italian, that's integrated into this culture. She just doesn't exist yet. I've had to create her. And the only way to create her was to show up as her before it felt comfortable. I've had to live from the vision of all of this working out. I've had to draw upon the confidence of that vision, the knowing that this is right, even when it doesn't make logical sense. I've had to summon the courage to keep going when it felt unfamiliar, when it felt uncomfortable, when it felt like I was breaking every ancestral pattern that came before me. And yes, at times it's felt like I've been putting a mask on and pretending, like I'm performing a version of myself that's not real yet. But here's what I've learned. That discomfort, that feeling of this isn't me yet, that's not a mask, that's becoming. Because I'm not hiding who I am. I'm not abandoning my true self. I'm not performing to be acceptable. I'm expanding who I'm meant to be. I'm breaking ancestral DNA that's been rooted in the same place for hundreds of years. I'm choosing a life that has no logical explanation, only a deep internal pull. I'm speaking a language that doesn't feel natural yet. I'm living in a place that has no connection to my heritage, and it's the most authentic thing I've ever done, because it's moving me towards my wholeness, not away from it. It's revealing who I actually am, not hiding it. It's expanding me, not contracting me. Yes, it's uncomfortable, but it's not a mask. It's becoming. And now, after living here, after speaking Italian, after integrating into the culture, it's starting to feel more true. Not because it's become familiar, but because I've grown into it. I've become the version of myself who lives in Italy, who speaks Italian, who's breaking ancestral patterns and creating a new lineage. I wasn't faking, I was becoming. And the only reason that version feels true now is because I was willing to step into it before it felt comfortable. That's how becoming works. You have to embody the future version of yourself before it feels true. You have to speak the language before it feels natural. You have to live the vision before it feels real. You have to draw upon the confidence and courage of who you're becoming, even if it feels like you're pretending at times. Because it's not a mask and it's not pretending, it's growth. And growth always feels uncomfortable at first. So if you're standing on the edge of something that feels unfamiliar, if you're being pulled toward a vision that doesn't make logical sense, that breaks patterns, that requires you to become someone you're not yet, I want you to know you're not faking, you're not pretending, you're becoming. And the discomfort you feel, that's not evidence that it's wrong. That's evidence that you're growing. So take the step. The future version of you, take the step towards that. Even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it feels unfamiliar, even when it feels like you're putting on a mask, you're not, you're becoming. And that is always worth it. Okay, next week we're going to talk more about this, about what it is to choose your future vision and step fully into it, about living that vision even when it doesn't feel real yet. That's the last stage of the wholehearted technique where it all comes together. So do check back in for that. Meanwhile, let me tell you a little bit about what changes when you drop the mask and you show up authentically. Because this is useful information to know, right? You need to have something to hold on to when it feels scary. Number one, you feel lighter. When you stop performing, when you stop monitoring yourself constantly, when you stop editing everything you say and do, you feel lighter because you're not carrying the weight of performance anymore. You're just being you. And that takes so much less energy, which is more energy you have for everything else in your life. Number two, you attract your real people. When you show up authentically, the people who were only connected to your mask fall away and your real people show up. The people who see you, the real you, and say, yes, this, you. The people who you don't need to perform around, who don't need you to be polished or perfect. The people who love you for who you actually are. And that kind of connection, it's everything. Number three, you stop feeling like a fraud. When the internal and the external match, when who you are in private matches who you are in public, you stop feeling like a fraud because you're not hiding anymore. You're not pretending. You're just being you. And there's integrity in that, a wholeness. Number 4, you have more energy. Yeah, we've spoken a lot about this, about performing being exhausting. Authenticity is energizing. When you drop the mask, you have so much more energy. Energy for your work, for your relationships, for yourself, because you're not depleting yourself trying to be acceptable. Number 5, you model permission. When you show up authentically, when you let people see your humanity, your struggles, your real self, you give everyone around you permission to do the same. Your children see a parent who's real, not perfect. Your team sees a leader who's human, not a performance. Your community sees someone who's brave enough to be themselves, and that changes everything. But here's what I also want you to know. Being the first to drop the mask, it can feel lonely. If you're a leader, a visionary, a high achiever, you're often the first to do things. And when you stop being authentic in a world that's still performing, you might feel alone. You might look around and think, am I the only one being real here? Is everyone else still wearing the masks? Does this make me weak? Does this make me totally different? It makes you brave. And here's what happens. When you drop the mask, you give permission to others to do the same. At first, it might just be you standing there vulnerable, real, unedited, but then someone else takes off their mask, and then another, and you won't be alone for long. Because authenticity is contagious. We're drawn to it, right? When people see you being real, they remember, oh, I'm allowed to be real too. Oh, thank goodness for that. When people see you showing your humanity, they think, oh, I don't have to be perfect. When people see you choosing wholeness over performance, they realize, oh, that's possible for me too. So yes, you might be the first, and yes, that might be lonely. But you're not just dropping the mask for yourself, you're dropping it for everyone who's been waiting for permission. And that's leadership. Number 6, you feel at home in yourself again. You know, this is a big one. When you drop the mask, when you stop performing, you show up as your real self and you feel more at home in yourself. You're not constantly monitoring, overthinking, editing, wondering if what you're doing is right. You're just being you. And there's a real deep peace in that. A settledness, a sense of this is me and that's enough. That's what authenticity gives you. Before we close this episode, I want to address some of the hard questions you might be asking right now, because authenticity isn't simple, and I don't want to pretend it is. So here are some of the questions that quite often come up in this work. Question 1, what if being authentic means disappointing the people I love? This is one of the hardest parts, right? Because you're not just worried about losing people, you're worried about hurting them. Your parents, your partner, your kids, your team. What if they're disappointed when you stop being who they need you to be? Here's the truth. Disappointing people is not the same as abandoning them. When you drop the mask, some people will feel uncomfortable. Maybe some people will be disappointed and some people will resist. But that's not because you're hurting them. It's because they're used to the version of you that made them comfortable. Here's what's also true. Staying in the mask actually hurts people more. Because when you're performing, they don't get the real you, they get the edited version, the performance, and that's not real connection. That's not real love. The people who truly love you, they want the real you, not the performance. And yes, there will be an adjustment period. Yes, they might be uncomfortable at first. But if they love you, the real you, they'll adjust. And if they don't, then they were never really with you. They were with the mask. Question 2, how do I know if I'm being authentic or just being selfish? High achievers struggle with this one a lot. The likelihood is you've been conditioned to put others first. So when you start choosing yourself, you question, am I doing this right or am I just being selfish? Here's the difference. Authenticity is honouring your truth whilst honouring others. It's setting boundaries with compassion. It's choosing yourself without abandoning others. It's about being honest about your needs while respecting theirs. Selfishness is prioritizing yourself at the expense of everyone else. It's setting boundaries with cruelty, with harshness. It's choosing yourself by abandoning everyone else. It's demanding your needs be met while ignoring theirs. Here's the litmus test. Ask yourself, is this moving me toward wholeness or away from it? Is this aligned with my integrity? If the answer is yes, if you're choosing from a place of alignment, not from a place of fear or reactivity, you're not being selfish, you're being authentic. And honestly, if you're asking the question, you're probably not being selfish. Selfish people generally don't worry about being selfish. Question number 3. What if I'm too established, too far into my career to change? I hear this all the time. You know, Debs, I've built my reputation on being this way. I'm established. Isn't it too late to change and rock the boat? No, it's not too late. It's never too late. You're not starting over. You're integrating. You're not throwing everything away that you've built. You're bringing your whole self to what you've built. Think about it. Maybe you've spent 20 years building success from the mask. Imagine what you could create if you brought your whole self to it. Imagine the impact you could have if you led from wholeness, not from survival. Imagine the freedom you could experience if you stopped performing and started being. You haven't come this far to only come this far. Because honestly, the world needs authentic leaders now more than ever. So no, it's not too late. It's exactly the right time. Question 4. What if I drop the mask and discover I don't like the real me, or I don't even know what the real me is? And it's a terrifying question, right, that's often unspoken. What if I drop the mask and discover that the real me is angry and needy and messy or broken? Like, what if I don't like who I am underneath? And here's what I want you to know. The parts you're afraid of are not the real you. They're not the sum total of you. They're survival responses. The anger's been there protecting you. The neediness, that's a part that's been starved of connection. The messiness, that's a part that's been suppressed for too long. Underneath the survival patterns, your wholeness, you are all of it. And when you meet those parts with compassion, like we've talked about, when you welcome them home instead of exiling them, they transform. The anger becomes healthy boundaries. The neediness becomes authentic connection. The messiness becomes creativity and aliveness. You don't have to like every single part of you. You just have to welcome them all in. And when you do, you discover that the real you, the integrated whole you, is someone you not only like, but have deep love and respect for. So here's what I invite you to take away from this episode. You cannot be whole if you're hiding. You cannot live wholeheartedly if you're living behind a mask. And you cannot create authentic connection if you're showing up as a performance. Authenticity is the only path to real connection, real fulfillment, and real wholeness. And yes, it's scary, I get it. We haven't bypassed that in this episode. It's vulnerable. Yes, some people might not understand, but the people who fall away when you become authentic were never really with you, they were with the mask. And the people who stay, the people who see the real you and love you anyway, those are your people. And here's the nuance that we covered today. We admit that the masks you wear have worked up until now. They've kept you safe, they've helped you succeed. But what got you here won't get you into your fullness. If you've been lying to yourself to stay safe, and now you need radical honesty to find your authentic self, this being a journey, not a destination. You're not looking for that one fixed true self. You're integrating all of your parts. And authenticity is about choosing which part shows up in each moment with discernment, not masking. And, becoming who you're meant to be, understanding that that's going to feel uncomfortable at first. When you set boundaries for the first time, it won't feel natural. When you take up space for the first time, it won't feel comfortable. When you step into a vision that breaks ancestral patterns, it will feel unfamiliar, and that's okay. Because you're not wearing a mask, you're becoming, you're growing. You're expanding into your wholeness. You're stepping into the future version of yourself, the one that is operating from wholeness, that's more authentic, that's more aligned. And that version of you is worth the discomfort. So give yourself permission to be uncomfortable as you grow. Permission for it to feel strange, to feel unfamiliar. Permission for it to feel like you're trying on clothes that don't quite fit yet. For it to feel like you're pretending at times. Because you're not, you're becoming. This is the journey. And the only way to become your wholeness is to show up as that now, even when it feels uncomfortable and familiar. Even when your brain says, this isn't me. It is you. You're just growing into it. So here's a practice I'm inviting you into this week. Firstly, notice when you're wearing the mask. When do you notice that you're performing? Who are you with? What parts are you trying to hide? Just notice and bring awareness. Then get radically honest about one lie you've been telling yourself. Just pick one, like, I'm fine, or I don't need any help. What's the truth that's underneath that lie? Then choose one small act of authenticity. Maybe it's saying I'm not okay instead of I'm fine. Maybe it's setting a boundary or sharing a struggle. Like, pick one and practice. Then practice discernment. Which part of me is needed right now? Which part do I want to draw upon? Before you walk into a meeting or a conversation, give yourself a moment, pause and ask, what part of me is most aligned right now? What does this moment need? And then show up as that part fully without pretending. And then identify one area where you're becoming, not masking. Where are you stepping into the future version of yourself, even though it feels uncomfortable? Celebrate it, honor it, recognize it. You're growing. Do the test. Ask yourself, is this moving me towards my wholeness or away from it? Use this question as your compass. That's what helps keep you going, even when it feels uncomfortable. So next week, we're diving into stage 8, which is all about your future vision and becoming. Right, it's a real nice extra add-on to what we've been talking about today. It's all about how to create a vision from your wholeness, not from your wounds and survival patterns, and how to step into that vision before it feels real. How to live from your future self, not from your past patterns, and how to choose your becoming consciously and intentionally. This is where everything comes together. So if today's episode has stirred something in you, if you're realizing you've been wearing masks, if you're ready to step into the future version of yourself, if you're standing on that edge of becoming, next week's episode is going to be really powerful. And if this work is resonating with you, if you're realizing how much energy you've been spending performing and you're ready to drop the mask and live authentically, you don't have to do this alone. This is exactly the work we do in the Recalibration Mentorship. Over the course of a year, we work together one-on-one to help you see the masks you've been wearing and understand why you put them on. We help you to get radically honest about what's true for you. And we embody all of this, right? We practice dropping the mask and showing up as your real self, navigating the discomfort of the becoming and integrating all of the parts that you can live from wholeness. We help you to step into that future version of yourself with confidence and courage. This is deep, bespoke, transformational work for high achievers, visionaries, and leaders who are ready to stop performing and start living from their wholeness. It's where you become more. I'll include the link to this in the session notes. I take on very few clients at this level, and I really encourage you to seek some more information and apply if this resonates for you. One more thing. If this episode has stirred something in you, if you're realizing you've been wearing masks and you're terrified of what it means to drop them, I want to invite you to something. On Thursday, December the 5th at 7 o'clock Central European time, I'm hosting a free live masterclass on YouTube. It's called Beyond the Mask, Navigating the Fear of Losing Who You've Been to Become Who You Are. We're going deeper than we could in this episode. We're going to talk about the high achievers' identity crisis and why it's so terrifying. What it means to actually lose who you've been to become who you are. How to navigate the grief, the fear, and the disorientation without burning out. And what's waiting for you beyond the mask. Plus, there's going to be chance for a live Q&A session and some coaching. This is for you if you're standing on the edge of transformation, terrified of losing the identity you've built and wondering if you're brave enough to step beyond the mask. You can register for free now at whlinstitute.com, and I'll send you the link to the YouTube live when you sign up. I really hope to see you there. And don't forget to download the free Rooted in Wholeness Wellness Companion, which is guiding you through this entire series, also on our website. It includes practices for each episode, reflection questions, as well as a wellness tracker and lots of amazing grounding resources in there. So if this episode has resonated with you, I'd be so grateful if you can subscribe. Be helpful if I can say it. If you can leave a review about what's landing for you and leave a comment, it really helps to make sure that other people can access this work. And I would love it for you to share the podcast with your tribe, with your community, so that we can grow in this wholehearted movement together. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this work. All of your parts are welcome. Let's build this movement of wholehearted living. And I am honoured to be walking alongside you with this. Until next time, bye for now.